I had always dreamed of a career that allowed me to make an impact, one where I could bring my vision to life and create something meaningful. From a young age, I was determined to break free from the cycle of mediocrity in my family. They were content with what they had, but I wanted more. I wanted to be someone who was recognized for my hard work, my passion, and my creativity. So when I landed my dream job at one of the biggest tech companies in the industry, I thought everything was falling into place. I had worked tirelessly for years to get there. I had earned it. But what I didn't expect was the sabotage. It started slowly at first, with small remarks from my older brother, Michael. At family gatherings, he would joke about my new job, calling it a corporate cage and telling me how I was wasting my time. My mother, ever the enabler, would nod along, as if the idea of me achieving anything bigger than what they had achieved was somehow a threat to the family's comfort zone. They didn't see it. They didn't understand. But I did. I knew they were scared. Scared that I would outgrow them, that I would leave them behind. They hadn't seen what I saw in myself. They hadn't seen the late nights, the countless rejections, the relentless drive that had gotten me this far. But despite their passive-aggressive comments and their hidden doubts, I kept my head down and worked harder. I climbed the ladder in that company, gaining respect from my peers and even my superiors. I had proven myself in ways that I knew would eventually lead to something big. And then, the offer came. The promotion I had been working for, the one I had set my sights on for years. But it wasn't just any promotion. It was the opportunity to run my own division, the moment I was waiting for. I couldn't believe it. After all the years of sacrifice, it felt like everything was finally aligning. But as soon as I shared the news with my family, the tone shifted. Michael, who had always been the golden child in the family, was furious. "You think you can just walk in there and take over?" he snapped. "You don't belong in that world. You're nothing without us." His words stung, but I didn't let them affect me. I had grown used to this. He always saw me as the outsider, the one who didn't fit into his perfect little world. But then, things took a darker turn. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things that didn't quite add up. Emails went missing, appointments were mysteriously canceled, and my work seemed to be getting scrutinized more than ever before. Someone was undermining me from the inside, but I couldn't figure out who. It wasn't until I received a phone call one afternoon that everything changed. The phone call was from my boss, James. He sounded off, stressed, irritated. I had been working closely with him for months, and I knew when something was wrong. "I'm sorry, Leah, but I have to pull you from the project," James said, his voice tense. "You're being reassigned to a different team. We've been getting some feedback that we need to focus on a different direction." I was stunned. Reassigned? It didn't make sense. I had worked tirelessly to get this project off the ground, and it was one of the most successful initiatives in the company. I had received nothing but positive feedback from the clients, the team, and my colleagues. So why now? Why was I suddenly being pushed to the sidelines? "James, what do you mean? This project is performing better than any other. I've put everything into this. Why am I being reassigned?" There was a long pause on the line before James responded, his voice softer now but still strained. "Look, Leah, there's no easy way to say this. Someone's pushing for a change, and it's out of my hands. I don't know who's behind it, but it's happening." The line went dead silent for a moment. I knew exactly what this was. I could feel it in my bones. I had been sabotaged. I had heard whispers in the hallways. I had noticed the subtle shifts in attitude from some of the people around me. And now, this. My own family, who had never supported my career, had finally made their move. They were using their influence to derail me. I wasn't sure if it was Michael or my mom, or even a combination of both, but I had learned enough about my family over the years to know that they would do whatever it took to bring me down a peg or two. They couldn't handle seeing me succeed in a world they didn't understand. The realization was like a slap in the face. It wasn't enough for them to sabotage my opportunities. They wanted to see me fail. They didn't believe I belonged in the higher echelons of corporate success, not unless it was under their control, but they didn't know who they were messing with. I had spent my entire life fighting against this narrative, The one where I was always seen as the dreamer, the overachiever, the one who would never fit in. They thought I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't be able to connect the dots. But I was done being the victim of their manipulation. I was done being the one who was held back. I wasn't going to let them win. That night I took a long, hard look at everything. The house I had bought after I got my first big paycheck. The business I'd started on the side. The trust I had built with colleagues who believed in me. It was all mine, not theirs. No one was going to take it from me, not now, not ever. I picked up my phone and sent James a message. "James, I'm not backing down. I've earned my place here and I won't let anyone take that away from me. I'm going to fix this. If you need to talk, I'll be in my office tomorrow morning, ready to take this head on." I hit send and leaned back in my chair, a sense of calm settling over me. They thought they had control over my life, but they were wrong. The next morning, I walked into the office with a new fire in my eyes. I wasn't going to be passive about this anymore. I wasn't going to let them dictate my future. I had the power, and it was time to take it back. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a singular goal in mind: to take back control. The last few weeks had been a blur of doubt and frustration, but now I had clarity. I knew who had been behind the sabotage, and I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about getting back on track. It was about making them understand that I wasn't someone to be underestimated. I walked straight into my boss, James's office. I had a plan, and I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way. I knocked once before entering, and he looked up at me with a tired expression. "Leah," he said, his voice reluctant, "I thought you'd be taking the day off after everything that happened yesterday." "I don't take days off when there's a fight to be won," I said firmly, sitting down across from him. "James, I need you to listen carefully. I know what's going on, and I need you to know that I'm not backing down." He raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "What do you mean? What's going on?" "You don't have to act clueless," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "I know that someone in this company, likely with some influence outside of it, has been pulling strings to get me reassigned. You know exactly who I'm talking about." His face tightened and he looked away, trying to mask the discomfort. I had him cornered. "Leah, I swear I had nothing to do with that," he said, his hands clasped in front of him. "But you're right. This wasn't just a decision made out of the blue. You've ruffled some feathers around here. Some people think you're moving too fast, that you're trying to skip too many steps." "That's a load of nonsense, James," I shot back, not backing down. "I've earned every single opportunity I've had here. I've been putting in more hours, getting results, and making the company look good. So tell me, who exactly is pulling the strings?" He looked conflicted, as though he didn't know whether to protect the people who had their hands in this or be honest with me. After a moment of hesitation, he finally spoke. "I can't tell you everything, Leah, but I can say this. You've made an enemy. Michael. He's been leveraging his position with the board to try and steer things in his favor. You were moving too fast for him, and he didn't want you to outshine him." I felt a cold rush of anger spread through me. Michael, my older brother, the one who always thought he was the king of the family, he had orchestrated this. I stood up abruptly, my hands clenched into fists. "That's it. I've had enough of his games. It's time I took control of my own destiny. I'm not going to let him ruin my career." James looked at me, his face a mix of concern and disbelief. "Leah, be careful. Michael's not someone to underestimate." "I've been careful for too long," I said, my eyes burning with determination. "And now it's my turn to make the rules." I walked out of his office, my mind racing. I couldn't let Michael continue to sabotage me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. He had used our family connections to try and control my career, to make me small, to make me invisible. He didn't think I could rise above him. He didn't think I could get this far. But he was wrong. I wasn't going to let him win. I had a lot of work ahead of me, but for the first time, I felt the power in my hands. The company, my career, and the future were all mine to take. I was going to make sure Michael knew exactly who was in charge, and it wasn't him. The days following my conversation with James felt like a whirlwind. I was no longer the passive bystander in my own life. I had a plan. My thoughts were sharp, focused, and my resolve was stronger than ever. Michael had underestimated me for the last time, and now it was time to flip the script. I started working on the groundwork immediately. I knew the system, the company, the board members, the key players in the organization, and I knew how they all played their parts. But the real power in the company didn't lie in the higher-ups or in the decisions that were made in conference rooms. The real power lay with the people who made the decisions happen, the ones who had a stake in the company's success, the ones who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. I reached out to key colleagues I had worked closely with over the years, people who knew my work ethic, who knew how hard I had fought to earn my place at the table. I was careful with my words, but they knew. They knew I was serious. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was taking charge. Through these conversations, I learned something crucial. I wasn't alone. Many people in the company had quietly supported my efforts. They had seen my potential. They respected my contributions, and they were ready to back me. I made a move. I scheduled a meeting with the board. It wasn't something that would have been easy for anyone else to pull off, especially someone who had only recently earned their place in the company. But I wasn't just anyone. I wasn't the woman my family had tried to silence. I wasn't the meek, quiet girl they had expected me to be. I entered the room the next morning with confidence. The board members were seated around the long oak table, each of them eyeing me as I walked in. Michael was there too, sitting across from me, trying to hide the smug look on his face. I could see the doubt in his eyes as he tried to size me up. He didn't know what I had prepared. He didn't know I had done my homework. I walked straight to the front of the room, looking each of them in the eye. It was time to make my case. I've been with this company for years. I've worked tirelessly to contribute to its success. I began, my voice steady and commanding. And despite the obstacles I've faced, I've managed to help grow the business, build client relationships, and improve our market share. But recently, I've found that my work has been undermined. I could feel the tension in the room rise. I wasn't backing down. Some of you may have noticed the recent changes in direction, decisions that don't reflect the hard work and dedication I've shown. I continued, my gaze turning towards Michael. I'm here today to tell you that I am fully committed to this company, and I'm ready to lead. I'm not asking for permission to succeed. I'm telling you that I am the future of this company, and it's time for the leadership to reflect that. There was a long silence as the board members exchanged glances. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The wheels were turning in his head, but he didn't speak. Then, a senior board member, Mr. Clark, leaned forward. "Leah," he said, his voice calm but piercing, "you've made an impressive case. But you must understand, this is not an easy decision. There are many factors at play here." "I understand," I replied, not backing down an inch. "But the biggest factor is this. I have the vision, the expertise, and the drive to take this company to the next level. It's time for new leadership, and that leadership is me." Another silence followed, this one even heavier. The tension was almost palpable, but I could see the shift. I could feel it. The board members weren't just listening. They were weighing my words, measuring the truth in them. Michael opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "This isn't about a personal vendetta, Michael. This is about what's best for the company, what's best for all of us." He stiffened, and for the first time I saw the vulnerability in his eyes. He was used to being the one with the power. He was used to having the final say, but now the table had turned. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Clark stood up and addressed the board. "Leah, we've heard you. We'll take your proposal into consideration. We'll need some time to discuss this, but we'll get back to you soon." I stood up, my heart racing. I had planted the seed. Now, it was up to them to decide whether they were going to continue down the same old path or take a risk on someone who was ready to lead. I left the meeting room with a sense of accomplishment, but I wasn't done yet. The battle wasn't over. The real work was just beginning. I had proven that I had the power to take control. Now, it was time to see if they were ready to accept it. The days that followed the board meeting felt like an eternity. I couldn't stop thinking about the decision that was hanging in the air. Was I really going to get the position? Was I really going to be in control? My days in the office were filled with tension. Michael was noticeably colder. He didn't make eye contact with me. His usual jokes and passive-aggressive remarks had disappeared, replaced with icy silence. He was on edge, and I loved it. For once I was the one who had the upper hand, and he knew it. I kept pushing forward, pouring everything I had into my work. I wasn't just trying to win this. I was proving my worth, not just to the board, but to myself. I had always believed that hard work would pay off, and this was my moment to prove it. Meanwhile, I kept my ear to the ground. I spoke with people around the office, colleagues who had supported me along the way. They were curious about what was going to happen, and they trusted me. They believed in me. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was from Mr. Clark, the senior board member. My heart skipped a beat. The moment of truth had finally arrived. "Leah," he said, his voice steady but with an edge of finality. "We've had a series of meetings, and after reviewing everything, we've made a decision." I held my breath, waiting for the words that would change everything. "Effective immediately, you're promoted to Chief Operating Officer of the company," he said. I couldn't believe it. I had done it. I had not only secured the promotion, but I had also earned the respect of the very people who had once tried to hold me back. The victory was sweet, but it was bittersweet too. Because now, the real work was about to begin. As soon as I hung up the phone, I stood up from my desk. I couldn't suppress the grin that spread across my face. I had done it. I had taken everything I had worked for and turned it into something more. I walked through the office, feeling the eyes of my colleagues on me. I wasn't just a part of the team anymore. I was leading it. But as I walked past Michael's office, I caught a glimpse of him. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and resentment. He had lost, but I had won. The power dynamic in the company had shifted, and now it was time for me to own that power. I was no longer just a cog in the machine. I was the one who controlled the gears. I knew this wouldn't be easy. I knew there would be resistance from some quarters, but I had already proven that I wasn't afraid to fight for what was mine. I had done it before, and I would do it again. But I was ready. I was ready to take the reins, to lead with strength and integrity. I wasn't going to let anyone undermine me. Not again. And as I sat at my new desk, in my new office, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. This was my victory. I had worked harder than anyone, pushed through obstacles that would have crushed most people, and now, everything was falling into place. But this wasn't just about personal triumph. This was about showing everyone, including my family, that I could make my own destiny. I wasn't going to let them or anyone hold me back anymore. The days after the promotion felt surreal. I sat in my new office, looking out at the city skyline, thinking about how far I had come. This wasn't just about winning a position. It was about everything I had worked for, the sacrifices, the late nights, the struggles. It was all worth it. And as I signed the first official documents as the Chief Operating Officer, I realized something crucial. This was just the beginning. The initial joy of success faded into a quiet, powerful sense of resolve. I had secured my place in the company, but now I had to prove I belonged there every single day. I spent hours poring over reports, speaking with key team members, and getting to know every corner of the business. The more I learned, the more I realized how much potential this company had. Potential that had been stifled for far too long by the same people who had been sabotaging my success. And then there was Michael. He hadn't taken the news well. In fact, he had avoided me completely, refusing to acknowledge my position and acting as if I didn't belong in the role I had earned. His resentment was palpable, and I could feel it every time I walked by his office. But that didn't matter anymore. I had no time to waste on his petty jealousy. I wasn't there to compete with him. I was there to lead. And while I didn't need his approval, part of me couldn't help but wonder, would he ever accept me as a leader? Would he ever understand that I wasn't the same person he had always tried to keep down? Time passed and the company began to change under my leadership. I pushed through new initiatives, restructured some key departments, and brought in fresh talent. My vision for the future was starting to take shape, and the results were already showing. The numbers were improving, the team was more motivated, and most importantly, we were building a culture of collaboration, not competition. It was then that Michael finally came to me, his face a mixture of frustration and reluctant acceptance. He knocked on my door and walked in, his posture stiff, as if he was about to deliver a verdict. "Leah, I can't deny it anymore," he said, his voice low. "What you've done here? It's impressive. The company's doing better and I can't ignore that." I sat back in my chair, watching him carefully. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, no superiority. He was admitting something he had never been able to admit before. "I know I've always tried to keep you down," he continued, "but the truth is, I was scared. Scared of losing what I thought was mine. I never wanted to see you rise above me." I didn't say anything right away. I just nodded. "I get it, Michael. But it was never about competing with you. It was about creating something that was mine. A future where I could succeed on my own without relying on anyone's approval but my own." There was silence between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was honest. And that honesty, that understanding, was all I had ever wanted. "I don't need you to apologize," I said, breaking the silence. "I just need you to understand that I'm not your competition. I'm your equal. I'm here to build something bigger than all of us." He nodded slowly. "I get that now. And I respect it. I don't know if I could have done what you've done, but I respect it. It wasn't the perfect resolution I had imagined, but it was enough. We didn't need to be best friends, and we didn't need to be anything other than what we were now, colleagues, moving forward in our own ways." The tension between us had finally broken, and I could move forward without the weight of his resentment. As I looked out over the city that night, the lights twinkling like a million possibilities, I realized just how far I had come. I had worked my way to the top, not by stepping on others, but by believing in myself when no one else did. I had turned betrayal into strength and used it to propel myself forward. The company, my career, my future, they were all in my hands now, and there was no limit to where I could go. I was no longer the person they tried to hold back. I was the person who was unstoppable. As the city buzzed below me, I made a silent promise to myself. This was only the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next.